No, Simon.
How are you?
I always do this. Thank you.
Sure. Everybody ready?
I'm good. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for coming. I guess, given recent news, the first thing I want to do is react to the ruling on our Oxford High School shooting, on the shooter, that he was ruled eligible to be sentenced to life. Thanks to the hard work of Karen McDonald, our prosecutor, and her staff, for bringing that to this point. In all of the evidence that I saw, it's appropriate, and in everything that the shooter talked about, he expected to go to prison for the rest of his life because he knew what he was doing and he wanted to be alive. And so hopefully the system will oblige him with that request to go to prison for the rest of his life. Because what he's done to other lives is despicable and uncorrectable. So we're here as it relates to some of the high-end burglaries we've been seeing. And as I got deeper into this and examined a lot of the kind of MO, method of operation, and specificity in a lot of these cases, more and more the conclusion is pretty obvious, as these are transnational gangs that are involved in this, that come from South America, looking to do burglaries and violate our communities, not just in Oakland County, but across America. So basically, the transnational gangs, the definition about them is a self-perpetuating association of individuals, transnationally. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's a group of people, sometimes in cells, sometimes with an organized specific thing for the whole group, and sometimes not so much. But this clearly is very organized. It's criminality at its organized crime best, in terms of that's how it functions. They work together, and they're here for a specific purpose. So they're here to exploit a variety of things. And in our situation, as it relates to the burglaries, it's high-end homes with high net value within those homes. So the logistics of that burglary, typically what we're seeing is they're traveling throughout the United States. This is not unique to Oakland County. Sadly, we're now very much on their radar. They typically, we have seen, entered the country one of two ways, either illegally across our incredibly porous southern border, which I'll talk about at the end, or they're using the visa waiver program, the VWP program, which is authorized by the State Department. And once they gain entry to the country under that program, oftentimes they purchase fake identification and they begin their criminality. And oftentimes they also cancel their return, which is a requirement of the VWP program. You have a come to America and a return date. Lots of times they cancel that return date, overstay their visa until their criminality is done or whatever suits them. They typically establish residency in the areas they intend to violate, oftentimes through either fraudulent applications. Because of COVID, a lot of apartment complexes went to remote applications. And so they fill out these applications with fraudulent identification remotely. And if they're discovered, they just simply move on to another location. Or in a number of cases, they're using Airbnb. And I'll have to also say the Airbnb organization is not helpful when it comes to assisting law enforcement track these folks. So they establish this residency if they believe they've been compromised. These groups will vacate their area of operation and move on to another one. We've seen, actually I've talked to experts about this all over the country. As you know, I'm very active in Major County Sheriffs of America. Our group actually did an intelligence commander brief on this earlier this year. And so I talked to that intelligence commander quite a few times through a variety of modalities. And there have been cases where individuals in these groups have been caught, and they have been working in areas where they have no bail kind of opportunity. So they get caught, they get fingerprinted, they give a false name, and they get released. And then they've been caught again and give a different name and get out, and they get released. And one group was actually caught a third time in the eastern states, and got released again. So obviously that's one of the problems with some of the things that are going on in our criminal justice system when we're continuing allowing people that are here intentionally to violate Americans to get out and continue to do it with no repercussions. In fact, the prosecutor in that case said that they actually laughed at her as they walked out of court.
What state was that in, may we ask?
It was in Nassau County, so.
In New York, right?
So again, if they believe they've been compromised, they vacate and move to a different, and they move, as I said, from community to community. So who are these folks? South American, Chile, Colombia, Bolivia, Nicaragua, Peru, Guatemala, Honduras, Venezuela. And as you've seen, at this point, we've already had 500,000 Venezuelans come across the southern border, of which we almost know nothing about. And the Chileans are taking great advantage of that visa waiver program. We know that for a fact. And so this is who the transnational gangs primarily are made up of that are doing this across the country. We estimate there are crews and operations all across the country in a pretty substantial number. So as we talked about what they target, in our area, they are targeting jewelry, precious metals, high-end items such as purses, electronics, currency, high-end watches, and if there's a safe that's not attached or they can either break into unseen or carry, they'll do that. The money from those things, they typically get it to a fence. They ship it or move it to a fence rather quickly, somewhere between 20 and 30 cents on the dollar. And oftentimes those very same products show up somewhere on the street for near face value. And the currency obtained through this is oftentimes transferred to either families outside of the U.S. or to a location to purchase and receive those kinds of goods and monies in a different way. The jewelry is often kept hidden inside the vehicle. They try to move them to high-end cities where they can get a higher value, L.A., New York, places like that. It moves pretty quickly. The patterns that we have seen as you look at this is crews. We talked about crime of opportunity, and they are crimes of opportunity, but there's a great deal of pre-operational surveillance. So they do a lot of surveillance on their suspected targets, but they also try to make sure that if that target is not, as they expect, unoccupied or not busy with people, then they move on. And so it's an opportunity in that they look for the best kind of moment in time to hit a home. Typically in our area, it's between 5 and 9 p.m. Preferred targets on a lot of these across the country are homes that are isolated. They back up to wooded areas, trails, golf courses, covert ingress and egress so that they can come in and out as best as possible without being seen. Oftentimes they make their entry via an upstairs balcony or windows, or oftentimes in the back. If they are going to do the windows, they do windows in the back. Lots of times they break out the window, go through the window without opening the window, therefore it doesn't set off contact alarms. So you either have to have other systems, which I'll talk about, in place. And so that's a common thing. And a lot of people, and we'll talk about this in security systems, don't have layered systems on the upstairs. They may have motions downstairs, but they don't lots of times have it upstairs. So if they come in through the upstairs window without opening it, they oftentimes can move around without tripping the alarm. So because there's no motion up there, a secondary layer, if you will. So they access, as I said, the neighborhoods by either walking trails or through the back. They typically have a driver or a car placed a bit away from the house. If they do have a driver in the car, the driver will notify them if they're seeing activity such as the police or otherwise, if they potentially have been compromised. So to the visa waiver program that I mentioned. So the visa waiver program is one that allows nationals, foreign nationals or citizens from different countries, and there's a number of countries that do and can participate in this. They can do tourism and stay up to 90 days without obtaining a visa. And so Chile is in fact on that program. Colombia is applying to be on that program. The problem is that it doesn't go through the full workup, if you will, criminality or what's in their background. They fill out these applications online. And so, and there's not a complete participation from the country of Chile, even though they have pledged to, for full and complete information sharing or data access on criminality. So this has been a big problem. A lot of communities and agencies across the country have requested the State Department to withdraw the VWP from Chile until there's full and complete information sharing and compliance, and to slow walk Colombia until we are assured that we know who are coming in under this program. Now understand, you can still visit America even without this program. You just have to go through the full background kind of thing to get a visa. So all this does is fast track folks, and these folks are clearly have shown that they're coming here using that opportunity to violate us. So it needs to be fixed. And those are the countries that I've listed that are currently part of the VWP program. So the application, as I said, for VWP, it's pretty simple. A lot of it is online, requires a round trip and a return trip. As I said, it's often canceled. Once they gain entry, they overstay and they just keep playing their trade. So that's the basis of that. As we talked about, Chile has not completely complied or shared all of the information, even though they pledged in July to begin to do so. It's still not to that point. So what do we do in the neighborhoods that have been hit? You know, we encourage folks, especially in our high-end communities, to invest in their home security to mitigate the risk associated with the TTGs. And that also means use it. Lots of times these situations have happened, alarms have not been on. And test your systems. You know, twice a year when it's daylight savings, I tell people, test your smoke alarms, test your carbon monoxide detectors, but a lot of people never test their alarm system, never test their camera system. Does it capture what it needs to capture? Does the alarm actually go off? I had a friend tell me that he had set his alarm and he went outside with a cup of coffee in the morning, never turned the alarm off, and realized, wait a minute, why isn't my alarm going off? The contacts had stuck and it never set it off. So you're going to need to periodically test any system, whether it's your alarm system or any kind of system you have, to make sure it's still operational. We encourage good cameras, high quality, so that they give us more actionable things if something does happen, and a system which is layered. And that's what I talked about earlier. If you have an alarm system, just contacts on doors and windows isn't enough. If they come through a window or even through a wall, a drywall, which happens, and they don't have anything but contacts on doors and windows, the alarm doesn't go off. So you have to have either glass break sensors or interior motion sensors that are a layered approach to that security, and it needs to be throughout the house. Secondly, keep all your valuables, jewelry, currency, precious metals, high-end purses, if possible, secure. And that means a very heavy-duty safe that is anchored, and something that can't simply be with a pry bar, because typically they have burglary tools that could be taken easily and attacked somewhere else. So make sure it's very well secured. So the other thing for community members, what they can do, and this applies to all communities. If you see something, say something. If you witness suspicious vehicles, as I said, you're more likely to know what cars and people belong in your neighborhood or are typically there. You know, why is that car in front of that house? I know they don't have that kind of car, our neighbors, or whatever the case may be. You know that. If we drive through on extra patrol, we won't necessarily know, well, that's a son or a daughter or a friend that always parks there, so that's why maybe that car comes back to a different city or state. We wouldn't necessarily know that, you would. So if you see something that's out of place, somebody walking through a neighborhood that's unusual, call your local police. Let them check it out. If it's not us, call your local police. If it's us, obviously call us. We'd all like to check out suspicious activity 100 times in case one of those could be something that's valuable and actually is something in progress. So don't feel like you're troubling us. That's what we do. The other thing I want to hit on is the border. So, we have talked about these different groups, and I just need to give you an update about what kind of threat picture we talk about, because you hear in the news every day, how it's affecting New York, right? And how it's affecting the border. And so a lot of people, even until New York had this big surge, it was kind of abstract to them. But now, because they have so many, it really is impacting them. And so a lot of people feel like, well, maybe it's not impacting us. Border security isn't really impacting us, but it does. It does on a daily basis. The border, as we know, is very rich with cartel activity. They're crossing, they're using it to bring in fentanyl. When you've got 100,000 deaths the last 2 years in America, the majority of that coming across our border, that's killing Americans. And we know this for a fact, huge amounts of human trafficking coming across that border. And it's coming there because they know they can get in and they can make profit off it. So it's encouraging human trafficking. We know that in addition to that, terrorists are coming across the border. Just in the last 2 years, since 2021, people on the terror watch list that have been caught coming across the border is up 906%. 906% since 2021. People on the terror watch list have been caught. That doesn't tell us how many didn't get caught. Criminals coming across the border that have been caught, it's up 183% that have a criminal record that are sneaking into America since 2021, up 183%. That obviously includes exactly what we're talking about. These can be career criminals. They can be people trained to violate other people. We know these folks that are hammering us right now are very well trained in South America. They know what to do, how to do, and when to do it. And then the other thing that we don't talk about is, and that 183%, that equated to 18,586 people that were caught with criminal records since 2021. And that does not include the 600,000 gotaways, meaning they don't even know who they are, but they weren't ever caught. So border security for everybody is critically important. And our take, and I'm switching my hat to Major County Sheriffs of America, where I'm head of government affairs, is secure the border first, period, and foremost. Fix the immigration system so people that are coming here for a better life have an easier and a more timely process. But fix the borders too. You can do both. But unfortunately, Congress, and not just this administration, but numerous administrations, have never dealt with this issue. Secure the border, first and foremost, because America is getting crushed with fentanyl, human trafficking, terrorist activity that is a ticking time bomb, in my opinion, and obviously transnational gangs that are now attacking communities right here in Oakland County. Secure the border, fix the immigration system, do your damn job. I mean, just do your job. It's frustrating because the fallout lands on all of us in every level. So, questions?
Sheriff, quick question for on people being on the lookout and on alert for vehicles that don't belong. So I'm typically in that vehicle that doesn't belong. Sometimes I drive separately from my photographer. I'm just sitting there writing, trying to save time. How do you manage that from innocent people who may even just be wanting to take a walk through a neighborhood that's not theirs, and people who are just a lot of people work out of their vehicles like I do, and that sort of thing.
It's a simple, quick contact. We'd roll up and say, "Hey, we got a call. Just curious what you're doing in the area." And I'm working in my car. I live nearby.
Then do I need to produce ID at that point then?
Well, I've seen you. They've got a plate. At least it gives them a path, but it gives them an opportunity to check it out. And if, it's not somebody that says, oh, I'm just, working in my car, or curious on the neighborhood, I'm out for a walk, it gives them a chance, people that are trained to know what, okay, that doesn't make sense what you just told me, to maybe look a little deeper. Again, we'd rather check out 100 nothings than miss one real deal.
And I would always turn over my ID to any law enforcement officer, but do people have an obligation during as such an encounter to furnish their identification to the officers?
Just under that basic premise, no. But, they just, a couple of questions, I may just move on anyway. I may say, okay, I got it, no problem, just walk in the neighborhood. And, they should have a sense about it. It shouldn't be confrontational. I mean, I remember, this was a terrible, tragic, different time, but I remember in the Oakland County child killer days, I was working when the last child was kidnapped. And then prosecutor L. Brooks Patterson issued a countywide search warrant to search every moving vehicle. Completely unconstitutional if you look at it in retrospect, but the whole community was like, we don't care, try to find that kid when they're still alive. When I was stopping cars that night, people would say, I've been stopped 10 times, but please look in my trunk. I mean, I think people understand if we approach it together as a community and say, we've got kind of this surge of crime going on, we're just kind of being extra vigilant, what are you doing walking through that backyard? Oh, I'm coming from this house, that house. Great. Have a great day. Because if we don't check things out, if we don't look into things, we're going to miss things.
Can you share some context of, an MO, if there is one? Do these folks work in pairs, 3, 4 at a time? How do you know they're responsible for some of the incidents here if there haven't been apprehensions, I'm assuming? Or we would have heard you mention that, or?
Yeah, it's multiple people. 3, 4 people is not uncommon, working in group effort. In terms of how you kind of tie these things together, it's what we call an MO, method of operation, how they operate, how they attack a house, what do they take, how long they're in there, what are they looking for, how they move when they're in there. They're very obviously focused and I think pretty well trained.
You've mentioned that this has been ongoing. Can you give a little more specificity of the metro area as for what communities may have been targeted? Have they been here for 6 months, a year? How long you've seen them?
Well, and part of that, you have to kind of go back. You may be a community that only had one burglary, maybe it was 2 years ago. And now you're going back and looking at it going, wait a minute, a lot of this information is similar. And then it's going to be drawn in and looped into this kind of group. So it can go back years. And so we're still in the process. One thing we have that's amazing, every agency and partner in Oakland County, all of our local police departments, we're on the same page. If they have a problem, it's my problem. If I have a problem, it's their problem. We're sharing information and we're pouring a lot of resources into this because whether you live in a high-end neighborhood or a low income neighborhood, you want to be safe in your home. If somebody breaks in your house, there's a sense of violation and a sense of fear. And a lot of people don't even want to go back to the house. And we understand that. So we're working very hard, all of us together, to address that and try to figure out which cases are related to this, which are separate, because we know some of them are not related. Bloomfield Township recently caught somebody in one of the areas that had previously been connected to one of these, but it was not connected at all, that one where they made a very good catch. So that's all part of the ongoing examination.
Can you share communities by name or by how many? And are we seeing?
At this point, I would guess that we've seen probably between 8 and 11
Over how much period of time?
over a period of a year or so. But we've had a big surge recently. Probably the vast majority of those have been in the last month or 2
Where?
in Oakland County.
Are you saying where?
Because a lot of people say, what neighborhood? And I just want to stay away from a particular neighborhood because it's not necessarily a neighborhood, it's the target. So I don't want people in this neighborhood to be, oh my gosh, we're it. And then somebody over here go, oh, whew, it's not us, and not do anything. Because it may not be them today, but these groups move to different neighborhoods. If their target is high-end homes with high-value products in it. And so today it may be one particular neighborhood in one community, and tomorrow it's somebody else. And so we're trying to get the alert out to all the communities because it has moved all through the county, and we think frankly, as other communities in Michigan begin to look at their cases, it's probably been in their counties, because we know it's already across the country.
I had two more, not to monopolize. Is part of their MO not to be there when the residents are there, meaning they're not into conflict, if you will?
There's a couple different groups that are kind of operating, but one of the groups is very focused on trying not to have any encounters with people. So they really focus on an unoccupied home to try to minimize that contact.
And I'm interested what conversations you've had, if you can share, with federal law enforcement in regard to the partnership and the approach of trying to track these folks down.
Yeah, obviously, we've got a deep partnership with our federal counterparts, the FBI, great partners, DHS, and obviously those components are critical. And DHS is under a tremendous strain at the border. The men and women at the border, have an incredibly tough job because Washington won't give them the tools and the support they need to secure our border. I mean, that's plain and simple. So, but our relationship with them is seamless.
Sheriff, there may be, some of this I know you may not be able to comment on because obviously as a follow-up on the specific metrics, you're still figuring it out. But your jurisdiction is Oakland County. I'm sure you're in conversation with neighboring counties. Obviously, Oakland County would be a target because of the high per capita income.
Right.
If there is a secondary jurisdiction from your conversations with your colleagues, what would that be? Would it be Washtenaw County? Or what are you seeing on the ground?
I mean, it really could be any county. I mean, it could end up, Grand Rapids has some very high-end homes. And, we think that any area that has high-end homes, you're gonna see as a potential target. Macomb County has quite a few very high-end community homes now. So they're focused on the target, not on the community. They don't recognize jurisdictions or borders of a country, a state, or a county.
Anecdotally, are you seeing though in your conversations any other particular municipalities that have thus far been targeted and there are confirmed cases there?
Yes, well, in Oakland County, we know of a number, and we're in direct communication already. We know of others, both in the state and outside the state, and we're in communication with them as well.
Can you tell us where elsewhere?
Some of those are pending cases and investigations, so I don't want to get into some of the specific.
And on the VWP program, the changes you're requesting, would they require legislative action or is it something on, based on the
That can be a State Department action.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking you,
Yep.
yeah, because of your national connections. Can the State Department act to make the changes you're specifically requesting to VWP today?
Yes.
I just, if you can contextualize or give us some understanding of if the problem you think is mostly related to VWP, or you think the southern border is the bigger issue in terms of the gang activity we're seeing here? Which is
Very much both. We can't quantify who comes in illegally because we don't know how many. But we know a tremendous number of people have utilized that program that have overstayed and have been part of this process. It's hard for you to quantify what you don't know, but we think it's both.
And could you tell us how severe the problem here is in Metro Detroit compared to other areas?
Right now, we very much recently, hopefully they've moved on, but recently we've been the target. But that happens, one agency that I saw and had some information from, they may get 9 burglaries in a year. Small community, but a very high-end neighborhood in that community. They had 9 burglaries in a week.
Where was that? Is that
I
here?
think it was in Connecticut, but because I'm, all over the country, talking to folks.
Two things. One, can you give us some sort of general quantity in this most recent surge in terms of the value of the things that were stolen? It's $1 million, it's 500,000. And then are you doing this with us the way, is this in concert with sheriffs from this organization you're in around the country, having the same kind of conversation with reporters about VWP?
Not just VWP, also the border. In fact, the National Sheriff's Coalition, and it's a variety of groups. It's the border sheriffs, the Midwest, the Southern Coalition, the Texas sheriffs, the national sheriffs, the major county sheriffs of America, they recently sent a letter. The whole coalition of sheriffs, like 5 organizations, sent a letter actually this month saying that,
To the State Department?
to everybody and put it in a press release. Basically saying this is a big problem if we don't have, thank you, if we don't have security. I mean, as I said, it's not just, people coming here for a better life. We understand that. Fix that, the way to come to America and make it timely and get that going, 100%. But secure the borders.
Just to back you up, general value of the kind of losses you're seeing within Oakland County because of the most recent surge, I know you said.
Obviously, it varies by home and what they had, but hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And just a clarification point, you mentioned fentanyl coming over the border.
Right.
That's not necessarily from illegals, everything I've read indicates it's US citizens who are acting as mules. Can you clarify that point?
No, that's not. If you're saying, is that the majority? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Are they part of it? 100%. But we know that the cartels are muling in a variety of ways. And a lot of that, also comes with human trafficking. They're forcing people.
Sheriff, if I may, so how, like burglaries have been around since, people started building houses. How do we know that this is part of some international ring that got into the country illegally as opposed to some group of individuals that just decided they're tired of hitting some nickel and dimes and they're gonna, go for high dollar targets?
As I said, a number of these different cells, groups, crews, whatever you want to call them, have been caught, sometimes multiple times.
And what they were caught doing is the
Is exactly these kinds of burglaries.
Okay.
And these burglaries, again, now they'll be copycats, I'm sure, but when we talk about MOs, it's kind of like you have a habit when you get up in the morning. And here's what you do when you get up. You first do this, you do that, and here's where you go. You get in your car, you go here. You have a pattern. Most criminals have a pattern. And these crews seem to be trained in this pattern.
But they didn't leave anything behind, or we haven't secured any images that that lead us to believe like, yes, these could very well be tied, as opposed to somebody just reading an article about the others that are arrested in Nassau County and they decide to do the same thing.
Well, obviously, I'm not disclosing everything that ties them together because we don't want to encourage copycats or other kinds of activity. But there are specific threads and things that we're aware about and know about that we're not going to broadcast, that begin to draw our focus on who's actually part of this and who may be just, as I said, a recent burglar in the same area, not part of it at all.
So really, what you're saying, you're here, other than talking about BWP, you're basically saying people who have a lot of valuables should level up their security. Level up their security, call if they see something, like is this the essence of what you're doing here today?
Well, what I'm doing here is drawing attention to the fact that we're in the crosshairs for whatever reason now more than we have ever been. And people need to tune in and do the things they can do to make themselves less likely to be a victim and do things to help us make that community, wherever that is, more likely to be safe and secure by calling us or your local police.
Does it make sense for people to start using that interactive crime mapping to see, oh, look, there's a spike over here? I know you don't want to say neighborhood specifically, but if they're operating in a neighborhood, wouldn't people want to know that? And wouldn't you want them to use your interactive map?
Again, there may be 3 burglaries in a particular area and only one is attributable to this or none maybe. So we're not getting so focused for this particular threat on a particular neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
It's the target. It's what they're looking for and what ties them together. Anybody in any community should do these things to keep themselves safe, make themselves less likely to be a target. I mean, I can't tell how many people I've talked to, and I'm not gonna ask you to raise your hand, but how many have your garage door opener in your car and oftentimes leave it in the driveway? And sometimes you don't lock your car. And all I gotta do is hit the garage door opener and the garage door opens, and if no one's home, no one's there to hear it, and they leave the interior door unlocked. A lot of people do that. I can't tell you how many people I've asked. Well, I do that. That makes yourself more likely to be a victim. So there's a lot of things you can do to make yourself more secure and help us catch people that are there to violate your home or violate your safety.
Just a specific follow-up on the 8 to 11 cases that you said happened over a period of a year in Oakland County. Were there any encounters with these gangs, with homeowners in any of those instances? To your knowledge?
I'd have to go back and look. I think, I know in one instance, they were nearby a home and a light came on and they fled. People in the home never even knew they were there until later that they looked at their security systems. So I'd have to go back and look, were there moments where someone said, hey, what are you doing, or things like that, but.
And then the series of data that you were citing, the 906% terror watch list increase in people
In
on.
the last, since 2021, yep.
2021 criminals, 183% increase. What are you citing there? Just so I can.
The actual stat came from CBP on what we call a TSDS list, which is basically the terrorist watch list. So they log their encounters with people they've actually caught, and it's up 906% since 2021.
What's this first again? You
See,
said,
Customs and Border Patrol.
okay.
And Sheriff, are you able to give us any sort of video? I know you were talking about the family that they turned the light on, they saw somebody running away. Without,
They didn't see him.
I'm sorry, no, on the video, they saw him on the video.
Right.
Without compromising any investigation, are you able to give us some sort of video footage that we can show, just to kind of demonstrate any of this activity?
Nothing at the moment. And again, some of the stuff on the video may tie that MO we don't necessarily want to broadcast and begin creating copycats. We're trying to balance what allows us to pursue this and what really is important to share. We're trying to share everything we can, which is why we've gotten into a lot of detail of how it happens, where it happens, and the majority where it's coming from. The particular activities during that, we're trying to keep pretty tight.
I understand that, but just for a little more specificity, the 8 to 11 in Oakland County, most of them in recent months, those are arrests? or
No, those are high-end
High-end break.
burglaries that match this MO.
Okay, so we don't really know who those people are.
But based again on some of the stuff that we have been able to compile, that we're not talking about the specificity, that's how you begin to draw it down and tie them together.
Like you suspect these may be the organized guy.
Correct. I mean, it's not 100% proven that we've proven that they're all, but we have high reason to believe that they are.
And if any of those arrests in those 8 to 11 cases are any already working their way through the court system that you'd be able to share with us?
Nothing I can share at this point.
Wait, the 8 to 11, you said, right?
Right.
No, there's
There are
none.
no arrests,
yeah.
correct, related to
They're
those 8
not
to
working their way
11?
through the court system, right?
She asked, is there anything I can share with any of those cases at this point? And I said, there's nothing we can
Yeah,
share.
there's no arrest, so there's nothing
Oh,
working itself.
you've made no arrests in those 8 to 11 cases?
Yeah, no.
0 arrests?
There's nothing I can talk about in those current cases.
I guess
In terms of suspects or where we are in the case.
I got the understanding that there
Yeah,
may
no,
have
there's
been
no,
some.
there's no arrest, yeah.
So you're confirming 0 arrests in those cases?
I'm telling you, there's nothing I can tell you in terms of where we are in the cases on any of those at the moment, because we don't want to jeopardize anything. We'll give you everything we can that doesn't jeopardize any potential case now or in the future.
Before you leave, can we go back to Crumbly for a quick second?
Sure.
Obviously, come December 8th, any sentence can be imposed, but the door is open for life.
Yes.
Are you saying by your opening comment that you think life is appropriate in his case?
I am.
And can you elaborate on that and weigh in regard to youthful offenders being rehabilitated over the span of their lives versus this case, this individual, the severity of it, the planning of it? Can you give us a little context of where you've landed on this and why?
Well, I think I, like the prosecutor, because we have seen the totality of evidence, we've seen the journals, the musings, the videos of very much callousness and intentionalness of, I'm gonna go kill as many people as I can. I know I'm gonna be in prison the rest of my life, but I want basically to see the fallout of this suffering. You know, at some point, criminal justice, the criminal justice system has to mean justice for the victims as well as the perpetrator. The perpetrator has a wide enumerated list of rights, and those have to be followed 100%. But the victims who came to this system through no act of their own, unwillingly, and the families thereof deserve justice. And our penalties have always been commensurate with the actions. And when you've got somebody who intentionally goes in to murder as many other kids as he can, knowing and anticipating I'm going to go to prison for the rest of my life, still willing to do it and actually be excited about it, I'm sorry.
And you think life without the possibility of parole specifically is appropriate for Ethan Crumbley?
The day any of these families and individuals can have their life be whole again is the day that I would worry about his life being whole again. I mean, he can live a long life, he can study, he can do whatever he wants, but he's destroyed not only the lives he took, but the families and the friends and the community that were affected by it.
No parole.
In my opinion, no.
Can I ask one more off topic, different totally? Senate hearing yesterday on a couple of bills that are going to full Senate on domestic violence related misdemeanor offenses and weapons being taken. They mentioned your name as one who did not want to testify but advocated for passage.
What was in it?
Bills 471 and 470 and another one, a third one.
What was in it?
Paraphrasing, misdemeanor offenders involved in domestic incidents of couples splitting, threats being made, and defining threats and escalation and being able to take their guns pending legal action, court action.
Well, I'd have to look at it. I don't know who said it, or I'd have to look at it.
But your name was mentioned as advocating for passage of these bills, meaning tighter regulation of cases where there could be domestic violence incidents and escalation versus gun ownership and allowing it. So I can shelve it.
Yeah, I guess I'd have to, I wasn't there, I don't know who said it, then I'd
Apologize,
have to
Liz.
read them.
Didn't mean to spring it on you.
No worries.
My last question, do you, any particular, I think, Chile, excuse me, on the top of the list, but any particular country where we think that, the cell that's operating here in the Oakland County area, is from? Do we have any intel on that?
Well, a lot of the ones that have been encountered, we think, are Chilean and Colombian. They can be other, you know, we also know Venezuela. I gave you a list of a number of the other countries.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And then one last question about the VWP. Is there any value in that? I know it's a fast track thing. I may have missed this in the conversation, but you talked about how it could be misused. But what is the purpose of it? Why is it necessary for some people?
The purpose is that when all things are safe and equal, it lets people come here quickly for tourism. And my point is, obviously, a lot of people are misusing that. It doesn't prohibit them from coming here at all if they have to go through the formal visa process. Let's do that until we have at least a downturn in this, or we secure the borders in combination with that, and we affect what's actually the fallout that we know is happening from some of these programs.
Okay, I just thought maybe the VWP was like a family emergency and
No,
somebody.
No, you can apply online to come and visit for up to 90 days without a visa from the enumerated countries. And it comes with far less scrutiny. Okay. Thank you.
One week talking about like 5 organizations.
Sheriff, the press release you were mentioning, the 5 national organizations, including the one that you're a part of.
Yep.
Do you remember like when that went out, or I just, if I can track it
Oh,
down?
the letter, are you talking
Yeah,
about
the
the letter
letter.
that these groups wrote?
Right.
Yeah,
And
it-
it-
I
and
think
it-
it was September 28th, but let me see if I wrote it in my notes. It was fairly recently.
No, I know.
No, I
No, I'm just,
know.
no, I'm saying, I was, no, they were asking the sheriff some things. Can we get, a
Cause that
copy
didn't
of
come from Oakland
the
County,
list?
it came
No, it came from the coalition, the National Sheriff's Coalition, which is all those different associations. I wrote in my notes, it was September 28th.
National Sheriff's Coalition.
Right. It was the border sheriffs, the national sheriffs, the major county sheriffs of America. I think the Southwest sheriffs, and I think the Texas sheriffs. I'm trying to remember all the groups that were part of it.
Sometimes it can be hard to track these things down depending on if they put the press release online, et cetera.
It's probably on, so for example, one of the participants was Major County Sheriffs of America. I'm guessing it may be on their webpage
Okay.
What was the date?
or the NSA.
28th yesterday, 20th or 28th?
I think.
Yes, okay, yeah,
28th.
National,
28th, that's yesterday.
Nation Sheriff's call for action at the border due to heightened threat picture.
You found it.
Right here, drop it.
Bless your soul.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Make sure.
Were you gonna ask if we can get a copy?